All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll talk a little bit here before we get to working the cows. The cows are the easy part. Enjoyed listening to Burke's comments on training people. This is the only industry I know of that we expect everybody to know everything they need to know the day they walk on a ranch. It's amazing. And then we fuss and complain because we can't find anybody that knows everything we think they need to know when they show up. And so I think part of what we've got to learn to do is to train people. And the thing that I really have enjoyed about trying to get better at this stockmanship, to teach this, you've got to get better at it. And a lot of us just expect it to come by osmosis. And Burke had some really good comments as well about making things available to you help to learn and getting them in a situation where they can actually pick up some things and learn some things and make themselves better. Stockmanship's no different than any of the other things we get trained on. A lot of people know a lot about handling cattle, and I'm kind of like some of the other speakers. If I can get you to pick up one thing today that'll go home and make you a little better or a little more comfortable in what you're doing, then I think I've been successful in what we set out to do. I've paid attention to a lot of people that work in stockmanship, and probably the best ones I ever paid attention to was my dad and a couple of older fellas that I grew up around. And is Kent still here anywhere? Kent Mills from High Pro was actually working on the ranch I grew up on, so I've known him forever. And he's been somebody that understands these guys I talk about out in between Snyder and Post. And I thought everybody worked cattle the way we did until I moved away from home and realized that is not the way everybody worked cattle. Everybody was really quiet where I grew up, did everything really by the right amount of pressure, not a lot of yelling and screaming. In fact, that was frowned on quite a bit. When I left home, it was a lot of hooping and hollering in the next place I went to, and thought, well, we can do better than that. So I started trying to figure out how we could communicate a little better what we were trying to do and try to understand why what I grew up around worked better. You know, I got a chance to, of course, I paid a lot of attention to Temple over the years, and also Bud Williams, went to a few schools. And I will tell you, if Burke's still in the crowd, that Bud never said I was his best pupil. I guarantee you that. But since then, I've tried to get better and better and keep working on it. And also, as Burke said, you never get perfect. You can still get better. So hopefully, even if you're a really good stockman, you'll find something out of this that can help you a little bit. The other part of this, I think, is the safety aspect. We kind of underestimate the value of stockmanship in safety. And if any of you own a ranch, and insurance issues and workers' comp gets to be a concern. And while I was sitting in the meeting yesterday, I get an email from Texas A&M that one of my employees has filed a workers' comp claim. I thought, doing what? Hell, we're educators. Then I got thinking there's some people come out of the stands try to whoop us every once in a while, so I thought maybe that was it. But it wasn't. He was following a cow he was doing exactly what I trained him to do on a lead up to a chute that had an old Brahman cow that balked going into the chute. So he went to the front, walked by her, and as he walked by her, he turned back and looked, she kicked, and a rock hit him and knocked a tooth out. So sometimes things just don't work like you plan them. But he shouldn't have looked back, he should have kept walking. Because hard-headed as he is, it would not have hurt the back of his head. It will chip a tooth. So anyway, that was interesting. I read that and I thought, well, that's interesting. Never seen that happen. The way I try to get this across, and the paper that Andy wanted me to mention once again, that I've got a paper that's in your proceedings on the little flash drive, I guess it is, Andy, that's called Cattle Handling Pointers. And one of the first clinics that I ever did, Rick Machen, who worked for us, came up afterward and he said, these are the points I think you were trying to get across in that discussion. And so he had 10 points he wrote down that he thought we were trying to get across. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good way to look at this. So Rick Machen and I developed that over the years, and Kirk Pate weighed in on some, and I've modified it every time I get a chance, and every time I learn something new, I try to change that. But it allows us to think very simply about the way cows want us to communicate with them, and then think about what we do and when we do it and what response we'll get out of it. And very simply, there's 3 ways we can, I've always said 3. People in the dairy industry say there's 4. And I'll agree with them, but I don't use their 4th one. The first one is sight. Cows want to be able to see us. All right, so we've got to position ourselves where they can see us and they know what we're asking them to do. And that's not quite as easy as you'd think about sometimes, because a lot of stuff we do, we wind up behind the cattle, okay? And so we'll talk about how to work more from the side and take advantage of that. The other one is through noise or sound. And so if we use sound, we got to be very careful in how we use it. And Temple, anytime you want to weigh in on some of this, be glad to do so.
I just wanted to make one comment. This person right here beside me said that that really helped them out on getting people to stop yelling and screaming. Because the thing I've said is, there's all kinds of stuff that we can learn about stockmanship, but the first thing you have to do is calm down so that you can learn it.
Yep. And it's funny, people will see me do these clinics and they say, boy, you're really patient. And Brian, they don't know me very well if they think I'm very patient, do they? I'm not very patient, but I've had to learn to control my expression of what I'm really thinking. That whole deal Burke was talking about on leadership as well. Sometimes you just want to call somebody a dumb-butt. And that's not the best way to get a good response out of them sometimes. So you've got to be able to change the way you do some of that and control your emotions so it doesn't spill over into the cattle. Because it's a challenge, it always is a challenge. But noise is something we can use to our benefit. To me, I use it to attract their attention so they can see what I'm asking them to do. I don't normally use it to add pressure. I do it to draw their attention to me. And I've heard Temple say this before, noise, if it has intent, it's different. If you're focusing that anger and noise on a cow, they know it. Because they can sit here and listen to me on the PA all day long and they don't care. Because it's not directed at them. Anybody in here use dogs? Ever been to a dog demonstration? Can they communicate with their dog on the PA? Dog won't listen to them on the PA. They have to turn the PA off and holler at their dog. Because that's different intent coming out of a speaker than it is coming out of somebody's mouth. If dogs and cattle are that sensitive to what we're doing, we got to pay more attention to what we're doing. Okay, it's just that simple. The other thing, touch is another thing we can use. Maybe up here in the lead up to a chute, you can put a hand, put pressure on one of them, get them to move away from you. The other one that a lot of the dairy folks use is smell. And I don't worry about that a lot. I think they can smell some things, probably more so than we do. But if we're controlling everything, unless you're just really foul, personal hygiene, I don't think it's going to matter all that much to them. And some of them may actually look for it. I know some people come up with cologne on, the cows may respond different. And so there is a difference there on smell. And then there's 5 things I try to get everybody to think about, and it all goes back to that first one, really. You got to position yourself where the cattle can see you. That's first and foremost in my opinion. Then there's a tendency for cattle to want to go around you. And if you put pressure on them and just keep pressure on them, they're going to make a circle around you. And we'll go demonstrate all this in just a second. The next one is they are herd animal, so they will follow one another for the most part. They're not like small ruminants or even Brahman influenced cattle. When one goes, they all go. Boss Taurus cattle, some of them may splinter off every once in a while. And if you're buying cattle and putting cattle together, they don't function as a herd when you first do that. So there's some things we can do to create that herd effect. And we see a lot of people that aren't building a lot of fences, like Burke was talking about in grazing systems, are actually teaching those cows to stay in a herd, and they're herding them like we used to do. And so they're saving on the infrastructure costs by actually herding their cows into an area, and then they'll stay there and graze that area, and then they can move them to another area the next day. So there's a lot of things we can do from stockmanship that can actually help make things a whole lot more economical. So we got want to be able to see us, go around us, follow one another. They want to remove pressure, which is probably the main thing we're going to talk about today, is pressure and release. And effective stockmanship, as I like to call what we're trying to do, is not anything about low pressure and being gentle and singing kumbaya to cows. It's about putting a lot of pressure on them at the right time to get the right response. And so we've got to know our timing has to be right. Another thing I see, people that are trying to get better at this, sometimes they're afraid to be wrong. And why do people in our industry get afraid to be wrong? Because normally when you're wrong, somebody chews your butt out. All right? They don't tell you what you should have done right. They chew your butt out for being wrong. And so we've created a whole culture where people are afraid to try things for fear of being shamed, basically. So I really encourage people, when you're out by yourself working, try something. If it doesn't work, so what? Fix it. Try it a different angle. See what works best the next time. That's the way you get better at it. Every time you feed cows, every time you do anything with a cow, you can practice on it. And we don't take that opportunity. One thing I think that's really changed the way we do cattle work in Texas or livestock handling, my dad and the guys that I grew up around grew up in the screwworm era. And I was visiting with a gentleman yesterday that said he met doctored the last case of screwworms up in this part of the world, or somewhere down here around Wichita Falls or somewhere, wasn't it? Screwworms were around in the 70s, even when I was a kid. And we got to doctor the last set of fly drops and stuff like that. But we were in the cattle constantly. And we don't do that as much as we used to. We go get them when we have to. And my dad never allowed the word bored to cross his boys' lips. All right? If he even thought you might be thinking about getting bored, you were either cleaning up saddles, cleaning up the shop, or prowling pastures. And mostly prowling pastures. And so that, he kept up the same technique they used during the screwworm area to go out and ride those big pastures and get those cattle grouped up, control them, let them go the next group. And so we'd run around. That's how we took cow counts. Nobody ever went and caught them at water. We actually rode and gathered pastures and held them up and did cow counts. And if you didn't come back with all the cows, he'd send you back to look for them. And so that was something that was very different in the way I grew up than what I've seen some people situation. So the last thing that, we're talking about taking that pressure off. That's the main thing we're going to focus on. And last and not insignificant is they can really only think of one main thought at a time. They're a lot like a guy, okay? We're going to use this analogy because a lot of you are already chuckling. Some of you will be poking one another on this one. But here's the other thing about it. You give a guy a task and he'll do it if it's not too what? Unpleasant. If it's something we really don't want to do, I don't care how much we know it needs to be done, we'll put it off. So what does the spouse normally do? How do we get a task done that's unpleasant? Keep a little pressure on them, right? So you may just be a little friendly reminder here and there to get this done. So as we go to work in cattle, we're going to ask them to do some unpleasant things. And so our timing of pressure and the amount of pressure and how long we leave it is important. Okay, so we've got to really think about that as we're working cattle. They want to take pressure off and they can only think about one thing at a time, but we've got to make them stay focused on that one thing until they commit to do it. All right, I'm going to ease out here and start picking up these cattle. It's always interesting to me to watch the cattle as we're getting ready to do one of these. Some of y'all probably been watching the cows more than listening to me, which is fine too. But they always tell you a story and they always know what the fool over here on Grace is about to do. All right, so when I turn around, they know something's about to happen. They don't know what yet, because they'll see what the fool on Grace does. So as soon as I turn around and start interacting with them, they're going to know whether I know what I'm doing or know that I don't know what I'm doing. So we're going to work off flight zone. We're going to use point of balance, all the things Dr. Grandin was talking about earlier. I was down here moving pins and didn't get to listen to her this morning. But all of those are things we talk about and use to get cattle to do what we want to do. And so as soon as I start going toward these cattle, they're going to start responding. And when they do, I've got to let them know I realize that's the point, that I've got to release some pressure. So as I go, you can start watching heads come my way as I start working toward these cattle. Right now, every heifer has looked at me. So they already know that I'm coming. And they're starting to move just a little bit, so I'm going to stop and let them know that's the result. That's what I wanted them to do. Now, if I want them to go somewhere, I'm going to have to put a little more pressure, but they're all facing the right direction. And this is something else. Cattle won't go until they all face the same direction. So now I'm going to put just enough pressure to get all of them moving. We'll just try to go to the other end right now. These heifers are not, they're taking quite a bit of pressure. They're certainly not wild. But I'll just come in as soon as I get this break and they start moving, I'm gonna stop. That's what I want them to do. I want them to move off. If I want them to move more, I'll go put pressure on them from the side, send these cattle forward, and now I've got movement. If I want them to stay straight, I really need to come out here. I don't want to stay in behind them, but if I stay out here, I can send them straight to the other end. Because remember that wanting to go around you? If I stay in too close, and I'll just see if they'll actually pull back around. That front heifer's not looking at me, but I'm gonna see as I step in here, if some of these heifers will start looking at me, they may pull off the fence. They're starting to look, but they're just as soon go to that gate down there. But I'm gonna see if I can stay in behind them and see how I can pull them out of that corner. By just pulling in behind them, I've actually changed their direction of motion. If I'm staying out there, I can send them straight. If I want them to go to that corner, then I've got to reposition myself back up here and straighten the front out. I'm gonna work on the front, and I'm gonna assume the back's gonna come to it. I'm gonna push on this 869 heifer, and she's gonna send a whole bunch around the other side. Then I can send them to that corner. I don't worry about all of them. I find me one that I can make a leader out of, and I'll send them forward. I'm just gonna keep pushing side to side. See, they keep turning, so I've got to push this side and straighten the front out. Then I'm gonna come to this side and pick them up over here. Then I can try to straighten them out before this little heifer did not go onto the corner, which is fine. Now I've got her stopped. Now that one may squirt if I push on this one. So I got to be careful about that. Now she's actually letting me push a little bit. I'd like to go ahead and send them up in that corner. So we'll just play with this a little bit. Because they've stopped short of where I want them to go. And that's not what, I can't have that. I got to get them where they need to go. So I'll start that side. I'll send some more cattle around the side. Now we got them going both ways, so I got to be a little careful. Now notice my flight zone's already down quite a bit on these heifers. In fact, if I'm not careful, I'll get these cattle too dull. They can use plenty of life. Now I want her to stay with that bunch. Now I'm gonna try to send these around without them coming too far. Send them back around that corner. Then I'm gonna send these. I'm learning that heifer that liked to move a while ago. She likes to come all the way around the backside and squirt out. So here we're just gonna keep pushing around, and when I do, I've got to realize they're gonna come out this side. And to me, this is fun. It may be boring to watch, but it's fun to figure out how to make these heifers do what I need them to do. Now, see, they're all going different directions right now. So now we're starting to get a little movement toward the corner. And I didn't really talk about horsemanship and some things that can do for us. But I want to be able to have a horse that can stay straight, stay quick, responsive, and not really run off. I don't want them overreacting either. So I've got to have one that I can send where I need them to go. I'm just going to keep putting a little pressure. This heifer here will leave if I'm not careful. Because if I start down her side, she's going to step this way. Now I've got these coming back where I need them. And now why am I worrying about getting cattle in this corner? I want them to know that they can go anywhere I ask them to go. And this corner is a whole lot easier to get them to go to than that gate's going to be going into the corrals in a minute. So I need to be able to get them positioned where I need them to go. Now I need Grace to stay straight. She's wanting to go sideways. I don't need her to do that. I need to tuck this little heifer in or she'll leave. Now I'm going to send some of these around this side if I can. If they go to the back, that's fine too. Now everything I'm doing, I'm pushing on an eye. Now I talked about getting cattle to respond to pressure on an eye. And that's what I want to do. I'm not worried about their butt or anything else. We talked, they respond to eyes and ears. And so all I'm trying to do is push on an eye and turn an eye, get them to go where I need them to go. Now I've got them kind of set up a little bit more to, Grace, don't turn. Now I may lose this one, I gotta be careful. But we're getting them closer to where I want them to go. Now I could scream and holler and blow this whole thing up right now. But I can also send that heifer back. If she takes off, I can go up her side and stop her. I don't have to go in front of her. Just up her side and stop her. And now we're just easing them a little closer to where I need them to be. And when I've got to be careful not to put too much pressure on them. They're doing pretty much what I want them to do. I'd like for them to go that gate and just stick their nose on it, but they may not right now. And here's another thing, if you got a good horse, you can just move his body sideways and stop flow and movement. All right. Rather than keep fussing with them, we get them close to this gate, we're going to do some other things. And so this is why these heifers, I want them to be able to start, stop, and turn. That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? But if I can get them to where they'll start easy, I'm going to send this heifer around, she'll start my flow, and she'll start pulling these others out. But if I want to stop them, all I've got to do is ride straight up their side, and I can stop them. That one on the far side hadn't seen me yet. When she does, I should be able to stop. And I'd like for them to stay straight. That way when they do stop, I may have to ride up a little more, I may have to get a little closer. Those coming in behind kept them moving. But I want them to be able to stop straight. And if I have to, I'll go all the way to the fence with them to start with to stop them and get them where they'll actually respond to me. I'll keep pinching on them here. But this tells me right now that they're actually not listening to me. They're just going where they want to go. So I got to put enough pressure to make them stop. Right. But if I want them to go, all I got to do is back up. If I can keep Grace straight, and I'll start my movement again. I don't have to go behind them. Now sometimes the faster, now so we're having fun now. I've been wanting to do that for a while. This is interesting. These run off, so we're just going to let the others come to them if they will. Cattle don't like to be by themselves. Well, that was unnecessary. But if I want to speed them up to the corner, I may actually come down their side and speed them up. Got to be careful. If I turn and go the same direction, the same speed like I was a while ago, I may actually slow them down. We'll just let motion take them into that corner. And Temple, if there's anything you want to say, don't hesitate to. I can't see you, so just start talking. I'm fine with that.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I notice that some of these animals have something else on their mind too.
They Burke would like them. They got the right thing on their mind, right? Got that fertility deal on their head.
That's right, I noticed that. And they're low enough stress so they can have some other things on their mind. Because if they were really super stressed, they wouldn't probably be doing that. Because they'd be too worried about the handling.
And like I said, I can get these heifers pretty dull if I'm not careful. And so I've got to be careful not to stop them too much or get them to going too slow. And that's why I don't mind them. If they want to run and play a little bit, in this setting at least, it's going to work. But if I need them to go faster, then this is where you can actually come back and forth across and do that same thing a border collie dog would do. Put that pressure on them to go to the other end, and I can get them to thinking about something else. It may not be as fun, but I can get them to thinking about something else. So I can loosen these heifers up. They like this end of the arena quite a bit more. But I want them to go the other end. So if they're wanting to hang here, I'm gonna get them to go. Me and 869 is gonna have a fun day today. She's got her own little drum corps, and that's fine. Now there I had to put more pressure on them to get them to go than I did the first time. But by doing that, they've also gone to the corner I couldn't get them to a while ago. So being easy down here, I didn't create the same movement in them as I did the second time when I put more pressure on them. So that tells me that I've got to be real careful about how I put pressure on these heifers to see what I can get them to do. Now, one thing we don't talk a lot about in a lot of these clinics is working pairs. And nobody wants to bring a good cow-calf pair into one of these, and I understand that. And there's some reasons not to. But this is the corner we couldn't go to. Now it's a pretty good spot because I was a fool on the other end. All right, so now I want to get them to move off this corner. We'll try to go to the other Hemphill County EMS over there just to see if we can. And it's something else we'll talk about. We'll get back to the cow-calf pairs in just a second. But these cattle can really learn to do some things if we'll let them. Weight 69 leading my troops. I got to stay out here to keep her straight. Because she will go elsewhere. But I'm not going to worry about going to get them, because if I can keep her straight, the rest of them are going to go to her. Okay? Now once she stops, then I can put pressure to keep these going up behind her, and I can get them comfortable in that spot. Now, while we've got them doing this, I'm going to leave them comfortable right there. Take pressure off. If you deal with yearling cattle and putting groups together, a lot of times you actually need to do a lot of what we're doing here and get them to travel together and stay together as a group. And nearly every set of cattle you run into will wind up with a corner they like to go to. And I think these are going back to that corner. That's their favorite corner. So I had to put a lot of pressure on them down there to make them decide these other corners are all right. So if I've got incoming cattle that I'm preconditioning, I'm going to make every effort to let them know they can go to any spot in this pen and be comfortable. I don't just let them go dig a hog wall in that end down there and stay. And I see so many receiving pens where that's the case. They just stay in one corner of the pen. They may go eat, but they routinely go to a different corner. To the same corner. All right, now back to that's where they're going again. So I'm just going to stop them, let them stay down here. On cow-calf pairs, one thing we see a lot of times, and probably not as prevalent in this area, but a lot of times we'll call cows to us, use a cake wagon. If you do that, you start separating those cows and calves, and you teach them to leave that calf. So when we're moving pairs, I try not to have anything draw from the front. May actually have somebody hold the front up so the cows can't leave. But if they're out in the pasture and we're wanting to move, I'll go around on the opposite side of where I want the cows to go, and we'll just actually start. You might even lope your horse around, do circles, warm them up. Those cows will go get those calves and get them up, and then they'll start leaving with them. Once they pair up and leave, then you've got a chance to keep them with them the rest of the day. Burke made a comment earlier, kind of in passing, I hope some of you caught, about in rotation or pinning his cows. That boy that was really good in Bud's opinion, they went through his pairs. Everything left and went as a pair. That's a tough thing to get done, but it's really important. And I see so many places they're pushing calves in the back and the cows are strung out and they're not taking their babies with them. And that can be a problem, okay? So that's something we want to try to work on the pairs and make them, you can do that. That's one good thing also about the sandhill system he was talking about, because you actually have to kind of go in and sort those pairs off that first week, and teach that cow to take that calf with them, so then you can take the springers on to the next pasture. So there's a lot of things in that process that helps build that maternal bond and get those cows to where they're actually going in and taking those calves with them when they need to. I'm going to get these heifers around here a little closer, and we'll see if we can put them in this. This is an ideal place for a gate going in the corral, isn't it? Yeah. I've been thinking it may be easier to put them through that 4-foot gate before this is over with. But one or the other will get them in there. But I'd like to get them over here and let them watch me open that gate. Now I know that sounds a little odd, but if they can see me open the gate, they at least know what my intent is. So I'll try to get them over here a little closer and stop them straight. That's where it's also talking about stopping these cattle straight where they don't turn back. And we'll see if this works. I don't know if it will or not. We're going to see. But if I think it won't work, it's a pretty good chance it won't, right? So my objective right now is to go put them in that hole. Now I've got to keep them all thinking, and that's something I hadn't really talked about. I want these cattle responding to me. I don't want them reacting to me. That sounds a little different perhaps, but I want them to actually move forward and respond to my pressure. Now I'm going to just see if she'll lead them out there a little closer to those pens. If they won't, I'm going to step in behind them.
About the responding versus reacting. When they react, it's like a sudden spook. They're just afraid. When they respond, they're making a deliberate motion to move away. There is a difference, and I think that's really a great comment.
All right, now I'm getting them about as close as I want them to get them. If I can coast them to a stop right there, I'm just going to go in a straight line to my gate, kind of keep them drawn this way. They're still watching. They may turn back before it's over with, but some of them are going to see me do this. And if I'm bringing cattle, I've got a doctor in or whatever, this would be the process I'd try to use. All right, so now, that's where I wish they wouldn't have turned back. Some of them turned back and got that heifer in heat on the back. So I'll have to start them again, but they saw me open the gate. Now I've got to get them responding to me. They're responding to each other right now. So once they get started, I've got to be back in my position to control the flow at the front if I can. I'm late. But they're looking at it, but they're also looking at Andy Holloway, and I don't know if they'll ever go that direction.
You're right.
But this whole process, I'm just going to try to work them over there a little closer and see if their curiosity won't help me out. I don't want to turn this heifer back, but I want her to go on up there and look at that. Now notice I'm stopping this heifer, and I don't really want to do that. But if I can ease over here, don't turn back. Oh, that's my bad. Me and Grace made way too big a move there. I didn't want to do that. But she was gone before I could get a hold of her. And so you got to be careful. Sometimes your horse can be too cowy to do some of this. I wanted to move a little bit, and Gracie ready to move a lot. So we got to start it over. No big deal. May actually help. Got them grouped up a little bit better. So now I can let my favorite cow take the rest of them in if she will. These got to feed to them. And so I've got to take these to push the others up to the front so they can get in the gate. I don't want these coming around. I'm going to try to push her in. That'll give me an opening to send these to. Now I've got to keep enough, remember that bad thing that some of them don't want to do? I got to keep enough pressure on them to make sure they go ahead and go. But we can pin them just about anywhere we want to if we got our stuck ducks in a row. And me and Gracie made a mistake there a while ago and made a big jump. But guess what? We didn't throw a hissy fit about it. Now she can't make herself turn away from him. Back her up here and get the gate. I want her looking at the gate. I don't want her going the other way. But if I can pen cattle in a novel setting, as quiet and easy as that, I think I've done all right.
And I certainly would agree with that.
The only thing that overreacted was me and Gracie. All right? So she's good, and we're going to get off and do a little bit on foot now. All right. So now, this is something else we don't talk about. These heifers may be very comfortable with me on a horse. They may not be with me on foot. I just walked in the gate before I even thought about it. Because I suspect they're worked most of the time horseback. So when you get on foot, that's a totally different beast to them. And you look more like a predator when you're this size than when you're up on a horse. And so I have to be careful when I get in here because it's going to change my pressure on these heifers. Now I'm going to send them around to that other side, but I've got to be careful how I do it because I'd actually like for them to be coming this way so they can see that opening. And right now they're circling this way. So now I'm getting them where they can actually push this side around, push on these eyes, turn these heifers back where they'll help me turn everything around maybe, and they can see that opening on the other side. They don't have to go around there, I just want them to. Remember that whole deal about keeping them comfortable? Let them be comfortable in any spot. Now, here I'm working more on the side and the back and not actually controlling the front. So I can do this, but it's going to take a little more pressure to get it done than it would be to send the first one. Because see, the first one gets up there and they quit. But here's where you just keep turning them around, and somebody will get brave enough in a minute to make that corner, maybe. If not, I've got to go help them be that brave. All right, now I've got a good place. If I can send 0869 around this side and poke her in, yep, she quit on me. There we go. Got the first one. Now I've got to send these heifers around, and they're going to leave on me too. Now here's where I can add a little sound. Adds a little pressure. And that's the only thing that I'm going to add to it right now is a little bit of a cluck, and that's that much noise. Made me miss her. I was paying attention to something else. But she's not going to stay over here by herself, that's for sure. So even though she don't want to be over there, she don't want to be over here either. All right. So now I'm not want to put a whole lot of pressure on these heifers over here yet. They figured out they can go around the corner and it not be a big deal. Now I've got myself a quandary here. That won't go all the way against the fence. And we got a handle on the chute. We don't want them hit either one of them, right? And so I'm just going to let them sit here and realize that's not a bad place to be. And they can relax over here. You can see they're a little bit stirred up. I had to put more pressure on them, didn't I? Effective stockmanship is not about low pressure. It's about a lot of pressure at the right time for the right amount of time. Now, if I'd give up on them, we'd have spin back on that corner. Right now, they figured out how to do it, get around the corner. All right. Now, this is something I like to have a bigger corral to do this in, but we're going to see if we can do it here. I would like for these heifers to come out of here one at a time. Now here I can let one out. These others are going to start. Now how did she get out of here? All right, so then the draw starts to get to be easier, but because she's come back around and they can see her over there, they've actually drawn to the back. So I've got to put more pressure to where I can get one to step out. I just want one to come. I want to be able to step up their side and stop them. I don't want them turning back. I've got to get this figured out. Because I want them to come here and then let me let them go. Instead of always going back to the corner. And I may just need to let them flow by here a couple of times. I may be trying to rush this a little bit. You know, there's a lot of pressure with all that up there on the stands. But now I've got some draw, and they'll figure it out. I'd like for her to stop, but not turn back. I'm gonna keep walking this way, kind of keep her drawn out. And I can step, oh, don't do that. I had her set up, but she turned back on me. This little heifer needs to figure out how to get out of here. She's stressing a little bit. But I'm just gonna put enough pressure. If I step too much, I'm gonna be out of position. Here I can draw one out. That's all I want them to do, is be willing to come out one at a time. And why am I working? I'll draw her head out of there. Hey, get out of there. I hear you. That's the heifer that wanted to stay on the other side by herself but couldn't stand it. So I got to be a little careful not to get her too riled up. So I think she might blow snot in my britches. So if she comes this time, I'm gonna let her. I don't want to stir her up anymore. But here, if I want to stop these heifers, I'm just going to back up and try to keep drawing them forward. Draw them forward, and then I can let them go. I want to draw her out. I'll step over here and push on that eye, get her to come around the corner. Now, anytime you have a chance to do that, coming out of one pen into another, you probably ought to do it. The reason being, they'll get real easy to sort. If they'll keep pulling to me like that, then I can decide which one I want. I can turn them back soft, or I can let them go. So that's what we're working on, point of balance. Remember, I think Dr. Grandin talked about when you're outside the chute, point of balance changes a bunch, doesn't it?
That's right, it does.
And so I didn't have to go behind the shoulder on anything to draw them out.
Oh, no, you didn't. That's what Kurt calls,
Yep.
driving and drawing.
You have a
The
drawing
other thing
pressure.
That I think is a really, really good point is
Yep.
when you're switching cattle with pens, practice doing what you just did. So in the future, when you do have to sort them, it's going to be easy. I thought that was an excellent point.
My recommendation here would be to never go behind a set of cattle and push them out of a pen. Always draw them out. Every time. Out of a pasture, out of a corral, it doesn't matter. Now, y'all remember how much pressure I had to put on them here by going behind them? Let's say if we started like I should have and get them to flow out and come around the corner. Work from the front. They like that corner, but now I'm going to try to get my flow, and I'm not going to be able to do one at a time going that way because of the pressure of the stands, but I can get my flow started maybe, and I can work on the side of these heifers and keep the front flowing, and then I can create my draw. Now see, that's a whole lot easier than what I did a while ago. Whole lot easier. These others want to come back all of a sudden, but send them back a little further. My friend may come blowing out of there, we'll see. But it was their idea to go over there. I didn't make them go. And so they're much more willing to stay over there. But by working on the front, see how much easier it was to get them over here, and they're less stressed because of it. Simple things like that make a huge difference. And so that's what I like to do. I'll come back across with them one time here. So now they kind of know what I'm asking. Who was the first one out this time? It was Snuffy. All right? So she figured out that if I'll pay attention to him, I can get out of here rather than always running to the back. So that's what happens a lot of times when you do this. Used to, you get to the end of your day of work and all your stupid cows be in the back. And I mean, it's a wreck trying to get them worked sometimes. If you do it this way, they flush first. And so you can get them out and they can settle back down while you work the rest of the cattle. So now we'll draw this little heifer's eye out, get her to come on. Now they're all looking at me. She can stop and smell the roses. All right, now I gotta be careful. I get too much movement started, they're gonna go too fast, but I want to walk out, walk up her side and stop her. Don't turn back. And I'm not gonna be stupid about stepping in front of them. They've still got a lot of draw to them. And I see a lot of people when they're sorting cattle, they really lose their mind if one of them gets by them. And that always fascinates me. And I use the line, if one of them gets by me, I'll go get her out later because it's obvious she and I both need to practice. And if we have that attitude about it, it's my fault she got by me. Wasn't any big deal. This heifer's so locked on she can't make herself turn loose and come out. I'm gonna keep coming, see if she'll draw to me. Keep her drawing. There you go. But see how far out I can work to keep these heifers coming to me.
I just want to make another point that's really good. These animals have had a lot of working and they're not pooping. And one of the things that shows is you're not scaring the you-know-what out of them. So when they start pooping, they're getting really stressed.
And trust me, I can scare the poop out of a lot of stuff, Temple.
Well, we don't seem to be doing that today, so but that's a real good sign because you get cattle where they really get stressed. I mean, they've got it all dribbling down their backsides, and that's something you absolutely don't want. Haven't seen that.
All right.
Which is really good.
Actually, we're just gonna practice. This is something else you can do with your heifers. And I had Joe, you still there, Van Zant? Joe come up and told me yesterday, he went to one of these clinics and was talking about, I was talking about training heifers to go through the chute. And he went home and did that, and he said it was kind of a pain the first time he went through. The second time they just flew through like butter, and the third time he couldn't get to the front quick enough. And so if we'll take a little bit of time on these replacement cattle we're bringing in, we can really get them to where they work for us very, very nicely. And so this is a bud box design. I don't want them all going in there at once, so I'll put them in the alleyway first. And I'm just going to open this. We'll have a little discussion about boxes and other stuff. One of the craziest things that's going on in our industry is some kind of insane argument about what works better, a bud box or a tub. And Dr. Grandin and I have had several conversations about this in the past.
Yes, we have.
And I hadn't really thought about it till she basically came under attack by a bunch of everybody that believes this is the only way to work cattle right here. Well, that's nonsense. I've seen cattle go through sweep systems for 50, 40 years probably.
But you got to lay them out right.
There's
a lot of tub systems where they're too tight.
Yep.
And where you come off the junction, it's way too tight, and those work really poorly. And I've seen bud boxes laid out wrong too. There's drawings online where they're showing it as a square. I can't emphasize enough the importance of laying things out right. And in my newest book, I got one of your bud box designs in there, and I've got tub designs that you lay out with portable panels. And then my other big book's got the bigger designs.
Yep.
But you can lay things out wrong, and it's a complete total mess.
It is, and here's the other thing. Anybody in here ever take a cutting torch to a set of corrals? Let's be honest about it. If you messed up and put them in, we got one guy up here that was so frustrated. 2 of them, 3 of them. I'm proud of you. My God, that's an anomaly.
I want to mention something else too on laying out corrals, regardless of the design of the corrals, and that is scale drawings. I can't emphasize that enough, and I need to get rid of the bud box thing that was not to scale with 3-foot cattle in it. But scale drawings. Also, when you're laying out a set of corrals, even if you may not be building the whole thing, lay the entire thing out. Mark it with line, so you can actually walk through what you are laying out and make sure it's laid out right. I am not a fan of just going out in the field and trying to build corrals, because you usually get all the measurements wrong. Lay it all out, scale it out, figure out how many cattle, let's say for gathering pen, it's 20 square feet per cow, maybe 35 to 45 square feet per pair, just for gathering. And you actually lay this out and you figure it out. Not just try and design it on the ground. That does not work.
The first time I went somewhere, when I was a kid on that ranch I grew up on, we built 3 big sets of corrals on that place. And the first one we built, they came out and they drove a stake in the ground out in the middle of 25 sections. And they tied I think it was a 20-foot piece of wire on it, onto a grubbing hole. And they said, draw a circle. So we drug it out and made a circle. Then we actually made the entire corral was circular. Didn't work worth a flip, but it worked. It's in the middle of 25 sections, you can't even get a truck to it. But that wasn't the problem. The way it came in pie shapes, it just didn't work very well. And we didn't know how to work it. But that was something that goes into laying the whole thing out to kind of see how it's going to work.
I can't emphasize that. I want you to lay it out on the ground, to scale, maybe mark it in line, walk through it. And if you're using a drawing, out of a book, make sure it matches the drawing. And my drawings in the books are all to scale. But I've seen total messes where people out on the ranch just change something in the layout. Oh, whoops. You see, the problem is they didn't see it. Now, of course, if you have a drone, you can really see it. But I think it's important. Lay it out, walk through it, and make sure it's right. Even if you're going to build just part of it, I would still lay the entire thing out and walk through it.
And the first time I worked with a guy who had to have it visual, it taught me a great lesson. He was an engineer. His son was a pipeline welder. So if he'd just strike an arc to anything, and he'd go to burning. But his dad, being the engineer, he had to see it laid out. And so as I was walking around talking about what I would do, you could hear his little orange spray can back there. He'd laying it out on the ground as we went. So he could visually see what we were talking about, because he didn't have a cattle background. And he was not comprehending boxes or sweeps or anything. So that really let me know that we need to map them out, let them really see. We're building one at our beef cattle center at A&M. And the companies wanting to come in there and put everything up. We said, nope, we're gonna lay it out with lime or paint or something so we can see.
Paint's absolutely fine.
Works great.
I want to see it.
Yep.
Because where people just get out and randomly start building corrals without designing it first, it's a mess usually.
So in this whole discussion on bud boxes, and there's also a paper on designing a bud box. If you want to build one, build it right. It's amazing the different things that are being done now and called bud boxes. But these are designed to basically take advantage of those 5 basic principles of cattle behavior. So are Dr. Grandin's 270-degree sweeps, because the cattle go in there, they flow back around the pivot post and come back out basically the way they come from, taking pressure off. And so we can set them up to think about what we think. So remember the 5 things I talked about. Cattle want to see you, want to go around you, go with other cattle, take pressure off, think of one main thought at a time. So this works in reverse order. When they come in here, their thought is, get out of here. It's too much pressure. So then they're going to turn around and take the pressure off. Then you're in the front. They're going to come around you and they're going to follow one another. The same thing happens in a properly designed sweep tub. Then they go around that pivot post, they can take pressure off and come back around you. And so it's no different if they're properly designed between any of these. The cattle behavior principles are exactly the same.
I want to mention one bad design mistake you don't want to make. If you're just making a crowd pen that's just a straight in funnel, don't make it too gradual, they'll jam in it. If you're just doing that old-fashioned straight in kind, it's one side straight, the other side on a 30-degree angle, make it about 12 feet apart, and you work on the angled side. But you can make something that's way too gradual like that, and that's a total mess. That will not work.
And her point on the old V-shaped or one-sided V's, whatever you want to call them, they're all over the state of Texas.
Oh, I saw one coming in on the plane.
They're everywhere.
And if you really make that just really simple, it's one side straight, other side on a 30-degree angle, and then straight. But I've seen things where they had 2 things so gradual, they just jammed it. That was bad.
You lose your pressure on the front. So a V, as Dr. Grandin just said, you work from the small end of the V back up the side of it. So you actually work it exactly like you do a bud box. You start the front, get the cattle to come around you and flow out of the V. Don't get behind them. And I see a lot of people will use one of them like and I use this analogy. Anybody ever seen anybody decorate cakes with that sock? You squeeze the back of that.
That's what you don't do.
You squeeze the back of that sock hard enough, something will squirt out the front.
And let me tell you what kind
Don't
of
do that.
wrong engineering approach is. They're going to put a hydraulic gate on there and we're going to squash them out of there. That doesn't work. And in the crowd tubs, I put the gate on the first notch. Most of the time you don't need it. They're not toothpaste. You don't try to just squash them out with a hydraulic gate.
We did a deal in where we at?
Dumas.
Dumas last week. Sorry about that. Couldn't remember where I was at last week. That's not uncommon either. But that little sweep, I could actually throw the sweep gate and then cut across to the solid side around the pivot post. You know, Dimple, you got the tub with the work from the pivot post.
That's right.
I could throw that sweep, and then I could step over here by the pivot post, and the cattle would come around me and just flow out of it like butter.
And they come out really, really nice. And you don't have to go to all those expensive catwalks, and I'm too old to jump on and off.
Yep.
You just work the pivot, and it worked great.
All right, so with this design, we're gonna bring cattle in, they're gonna flow out. They don't know, these cattle been through bud boxes? Have they?
Yes.
Okay, well, darn it. I like it when they haven't, because they'll figure it out really quick, but if they've been through one, I may have to watch out. They may get through the hole before I get ready for them to.
Well, another good thing that this has got in this setup right here is you've got a gate there where if you're in there with them, you can get out easily. And I strongly recommend if you do this, getting a panel with an extra gate in it.
Yep. And if you're working cattle you're not comfortable with, this can actually just be a gate on a hinge that's not latched where you can bust out of it if you need to. They actually make some gates that are man escape gates where you can hit them. The cattle can't actually get through them. Now, if I get one big enough for me to get through, the cows may be able to get through it, but most of the time that's not the case.
And I can still get through it.
This is something else you don't think about. We get a lot of solid sides on stuff, and Dr. Grandin's and our thinking's coming more together on this than it has in the past. But if you're going to be in here, I don't want solid sides on it. Because I want something my fat butt can get up. Okay? Either that or I want it high enough off the ground that I can roll out. But if I do that, the cows can probably walk out under it. That's a joke, yo. I understand how that sounds. But safety is important. And I hear people all the time, and we'll work this from inside the box and I'll work it from outside the box. You don't have to be in here. It's just convenient to do it sometimes. If you just one person, bring them in here and get them out. But I'll also show you how to make it work without that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put some cattle in here and we'll just run them through and talk about this process. Now, I pushed them out of the gate because I want them to come back in there. That way I can flow, get my flow, I can create draw, send the cattle in there. They were just sitting there kind of in the shade of those gates. But here now I can, this is something else. We designed these demo pens. Everybody wants to hinge the gate on this side so they can have a wing. I put it on the other side just so you don't have to do that. Everybody, use yourself as a wing on that side. All right. That worked all right. All right, as they go in here, what I want them to do is to go this in. I can push on this eye, get them to turn around. When they turn around, I can draw their eye out this side and they can find an opening. My job then gets to be to slow them down enough to get them out of here without bumping themselves. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that's a whole lot easier than I see some things work. Okay? So it's all up to them cows to figure this out. Now,
Yeah, but you also just put a few in there too. That gets back to my small group thing. Because what you put in the box has to fit in the lead up, and if you have to hold them in there, you might want another panel, another section of lead up. The small groups can't emphasize that enough.
the general rule of thumb, and this don't have to hold true, but you normally only put enough in here that will fit in the lead up to your chute. It's a flow through part of the system. Don't have to be that way, but that works best. Notice the last little heifer kind of balked. So I stayed here and kept pressure on her. Remember we talking about I got to keep enough pressure they make the right decision? She'd have just as soon backed out of there rather than going through that chute. But now she knows she can do it on her own. All right. I'll probably just bring 4 this time. I think it actually works better with 4, 3 or 4. Then other buddies got out of there. They realized that. So notice I don't use many driving aids. It wouldn't hurt to use one. Like I said, they've already figured out there's a way out of here. They just got to get it all in their mind what it is. And it works better if they go into this thing and go to the far end. And then when they come back, and they actually works better when they turn. Then you can put pressure on the front. You work this thing from up here. Now, I didn't keep enough pressure on her, and she didn't keep committed to the process, did she? So now I've got a little better flow, maybe. I'm gonna back off my.
This is where if I was actually working cattle rather than demo, I probably wanted one more section of single file chute.
Yeah, this is a minimum you'd ever want in a working facility.
Yeah.
I gotta be careful. She may want out of here more than I want in here.
This is what you gotta be careful about, that single. That's the animal you gotta be careful with.
Now, I'm just gonna stay back here and try to draw her head out. If I can't, I'm gonna put her with them other heifers before she wrecks the furniture.
And she's starting to poop now.
All right.
And it's better sometimes just put her back in with the other cattle and don't take a chance with the single.
Now, this one I'm gonna try to work from the outside. We got my old spook in here and then that last heifer. She's not bad, she's got a little more flight to her than the others. But with this kind of heifer, they actually respond better from the outside. Maybe.
This is where a little flag might be
Yes.
really nice.
Extend
right
yourself into there a little bit more. And I see they've
here.
turned back
Then
on
the
me.
flag becomes you in the box.
But I also can be patient.
That's right.
I want them to figure it out. Now, I could have resorted to anything. Flags, whips, screaming, hollering. All I got to do is let her work on it. This is fixing to happen whether the one in front of her knows it or not. I don't know if I can pull my pin on this thing or not.
Well, there's a lot of these facilities now where they get really nice slide gates, real nice slide gates, and I think that'd be a nice thing to have. And then you can just shut the gate, and she's not going to back out.
All right, now they were a little nervous about coming through there. When we talked about practicing, Joe, this is kind of what you was talking about. The first time they were a little reluctant to do all that. But they're learning, and the easier they get. And if I had replacement heifers, I know Bert don't want you keeping any replacement heifers. But if you're selling replacement heifers, having them where they work through your system real easy is a pretty good selling point. I started to be offended, then I realized class is out. So. Oop, I missed my gate. These got to have a place to go, so I got to clear some of these down a little bit. They may actually come out before I get these others in. All right. Look, 5, one more. Now notice I'm bringing more than I should probably. We'll make 2 trips this time. See if they'll figure this out a little quicker. I want to drive her forward and she'll turn the whole bunch around. And when she does, then I can start my movement. Didn't want them doing that. Now I wasn't in position either, was I? I was supposed to be up here to keep that from happening. But I like it that their main concern is getting out of here, taking the pressure off. I'd like for her to drive these cattle around, just like we're doing in the box. She can clean my corners out. Then I can work from the front, send these heifers on. Now when we work in an alley, I've got to keep this side going, just like we were doing outside. Keep this side going. Now this is what I like to watch. It's a whole lot less pressure to take that than it is this. All right, if they don't want to do it, I'm gonna see if I can. I don't want them to learn they can blow by me right there, so I'm just gonna step in and do it like it's supposed to be. They can be your good help right there. We haven't talked, Temple mentioned this a while ago about the.
Well, one thing I want to mention is animals remember really bad things, like they get smashed really hard on the head gate. They might go into the squeezing part but block at the head gate. And I just talked to a rancher that bought some stocker cattle through an auction. Went in the handling facility just fine, absolutely wouldn't go in the squeeze chute. And I told him, I said, I bet you somebody turned the pressure relief valve up as far as it would go on that hydraulic squeeze chute, squashed them all the way until the pump bypassed. They're not going to go back in there again. Because no matter how good your stockmanship is, you really hurt them. Shots, sometimes that's not really that big a deal. But you really hurt them in the hydraulic squeeze chute or just sort of bash them on the head, they don't forget. And some of the worst thing I ever saw of animals not wanting to go back into a squeeze chute were heifers where too many students had palpated them, you couldn't get them to go.
We're good for now.
They remember this stuff. What you want to do on your hydraulic squeeze chute is when the pump goes to bypass, it to stop squeezing before their sides are coming out the side of it.
So what I wanted to do next is, a lot of people think this is all getting way too slow and way too, I don't know, it's too quiet for some people, I understand that. When you work cattle all day long, you don't have to make a big fuss about it. That seems to bother some people. So what I wanted to do next, we'll actually bring these heifers through and we'll catch them. And this is a little shorter lead up that I'd like to have to really talk about getting flow started, but we'll make it work. Because there's some things we can do to get these cattle to step into that chute that'll cut down a lot of hot shot use. Most of the hot shot use I see on the cow-calf operation is right here. And y'all notice those heifers are wanting to balk coming right here? So what can we do to change that? What's making them want to balk, and what can we do to change it? They're not wanting to go. I use this analogy a lot, it may be a bad one. But y'all seen the videos where people hold a sheet up? On Facebook there's a bunch of these around. They have their dog on the other side and they drop the sheet and they run off and the dog kind of freaks out. Those are kind of funny. But you think about that, dog freaks out because there's supposed to be somebody there. Well, if you run a cow in a chute and you got a solid slider or something on the back of it, and the next time that chute opens, there's nothing in it, and they just saw their buddy walk in it, what does that signal to them? But if we'll crack this gate, or if they can see through it, as that animal leaves, we create draw that gets this one to follow the next one on. 90% of the hot shot use I see on a cow-calf operations right here is because we're not doing that one thing right. We let that cow go and then we crack the back gate. You'd be amazed how much difference that'll make. So that's what we want to kind of demonstrate. And by this design, I can run it while he's running the head gate. And so as I open this gate, I can step down this one's side to draw him forward. And so he got to draw that one. I'm going down the side just like we've taught him to do everything else we've done. And we create our draw and flow into the chute. Okay? So part of the job then on the head gate guy, those of you on the outside out there, they might want to close that gate. These panels are no longer tied together right here, so just FYI, right in front of the chute. we took a panel out and they don't match up now. There you go. I just thought about that. So now part of this is also, these heifers are really gonna want to, they've always wanted to go outside this palpation door. They get right there. I widened the bottom a little bit. We always like to keep it narrow so we can squeeze them better. I personally like it to be wider so they're comfortable with their feet wide apart. They'll stand better. If they're standing there narrow-footed, they can't get their balance. And then they go to fighting the chute more, so then we have to squeeze them. So I don't normally tighten the bottom end, and you notice some of these heifers were jumping out of this chute to start with. Anything that V's at the bottom too much will create that jump effect as the animal leaves the chute. And so that's where you slip and fall and all that kind of stuff can come into play. So the other thing when working the head gate, this one has a self-catch on it. And probably if I were running this chute at home, I'd stand right about here and not use a self-catch if there were two of you. So as that animal comes, you can step down their side and catch their head. Because most of the time our self-catch is not set wide enough that they want to come through it. Now if I get one that balks, I'll set the self-catch and then I'll work them up. But if I've got somebody helping me, somebody can stand right here, they really can't see if you stand sideways. But as they come, you can step around and pull that handle. So there's a lot of things to think about in that process. Now, I'm changing the way he normally works it. If he does it that way, he's probably going to miss something, he's going to blame me, which is fine too. In nearly any chute, there's a dead spot right up here by the head gate because the front of the head gate's solid that you can actually hide behind. And so you don't create that pushback. All right, we'll get some in the alleyway again. We'll run them through our box and see what we can figure out here. So I've got to get them all lined up again. I'm just going to take about half of them down here, probably 4 of them, 5 of them maybe. And I'm going to go ahead and go in the box. Whoop, I can't do that. Didn't leave my box open. Sometimes paying attention is not my strongest suit. All right. Now, once again, I don't want to go behind them. I want them to learn to come out of there. We can probably fit 3, maybe 4 in that chute and that lead up. We'll see. Let me get some behind her and we'll see what happens. Now see, when you do put somebody in the front, that changes the dynamic, doesn't it? I would like for her to pull her head around there. Now I'm on the wrong side. She won't turn loose of her, this eye. So I'm gonna do something here. All right, just in the interest of these heifers that are in here. All right, now we do our processing on that one. I can get this one ready to go. So as soon as he lets that one go, and then this head gate, he's got to swing to the inside. So I'm going to wait till she steps forward. He can step down her side. Now I will tell you, on my WW chute, I'll go ahead and swing my gate all the way to the inside before I let one out. And that way I am ready. And that's one good thing about a WW chute, that he's now ready to catch that one. All right, so as he does the processing to get that one ready to go, we can go pretty fast, okay? So it's not all that hard to get this done. Now I do want to show you something here. This is kind of interesting. You notice we just now set that thing. Being that close to the back, it may be somewhat of a problem. So most of the time, I'd rather have a slider. I think I heard Temple say that as well.
Well, I there's a lot of nice new sliding gates you can buy. And in my humane handling book, there's nice sliding gates that the FFA students can build in a welding class. I'm
Yep.
actually getting hate backstops. I've got backstops in my book, but I'd rather have a nice sliding gate rather than messing around with that thing. As we said before, another section of single.
I don't mind those
Shut
being-
the gate and
Being up a little further in the chute, but watch what it does to my flow coming out of here. Oh, she went ahead and took it. I like it. And notice they are kind of balking a little bit, and it sticks. There we go. But if we're getting our system to where it works right, why don't you go ahead and sit yourself, Ketch, and we'll talk about doing it that way. So if I'm here and I want this heifer to come forward, I can open my gate, step down her side, get her to move forward. If that's not wide enough, then if you're working by yourself, then you can do it that way. If she takes it the first time, that's fine. But if not, you've got the ability to get her in the chute and then work her up a little more. You know, he's really watching me to make sure I don't let one in on you before he's ready, which is you're operating the chute, you better. Now she'd rather just not do that, but. All right, now this is a great point. I'm going to let her go as well. All the discussion on solid sides and open sides. Where would we really be beneficial to have a solid side right now?
one place I think would be really beneficial is the back gate on the bud box. That back gate, stop them going back. No, actually here in the front, you need to have it open so they see a place to go. And as I mentioned this morning, you don't want the vehicles and the dogs there for them to see that. But the back crowd gate, any crowd gate design's one thing I think everybody agrees should be solid.
The other thing that, you notice all these heifers are trying to go to their herd mates. They want to stick their head out and go that way. So to me, the other side of this working alley, if it was solid sheeted, would actually help our flow.
Yes, it would, definitely.
And
This
so-
gets back to what I've said about outer perimeters, covering the outer perimeter. And that would be the outer perimeter because you're working this side.
And I like these panels to probably be half sheeted.
I would agree with that.
And then you don't have the leg getting out or head coming out through the panel if they do stick their head down. But these work. I mean, it just makes it a little more difficult sometimes if they're stopping to look at their herd mates on the other side. So there's things you can do from a design standpoint that makes this a whole lot easier.
Now, the whole principle, the outer perimeter part of it, the most important part to cover.
All right. All right. Anybody have any question about this? This gets easy when you create this draw and flow. There was absolutely no pushing these cattle through there. Now, the first time, how hesitant were they? Who pushed them through the first time? Their herd mates, right? So they stayed behind them like, Sally, get your butt out of the way. And so they actually trained themselves to go through there. And so if we set them upright and we create that push and that draw through there, that sticks with them a lifetime. Until we start doing something stupid up here, they're going to keep coming through. A needle doesn't hurt a cow. I'm sure it don't feel good, but how many times you seen a cow run through a thorny thicket? They just laugh at you coming out the other side. A needle's not a big deal to a cow. We are a big deal to a cow. And the pressure that we put on them back here, screaming and hollering and hot-shotting them up here, and I see really good cowboys out in the pastures. And for some reason, when we get to the corrals, we lose our minds sometimes. They can be really quiet out in the pasture, they close the gate, and everybody grabs a stick or a hot shot and goes to screaming and hollering. Absolutely never do that in any other setting. Well, just quit it. Figure out how to, and I do think we made a mistake in this industry. We started telling everybody don't use a hot shot, but we didn't tell them how to make cows work without using a hot shot. That was a mistake on the industry's part. Here we're telling you how you can get it done without a hot shot. I personally think there should be a hot shot in his pickup, probably. So if something goes down and it's choking here, I can use it to try to save their life.
And I would totally agree with that.
And the thing though, don't let anybody carry it around. Because I know how you are. You're going to see how long that blue spark is coming off the end of it. Every pipe, you find a rusty spot, see if it'll spark coming off there. run it between somebody's leg, shock the dog, and this poor cow behind the chute's gonna get it because you got it there, and why not? So just don't let anybody carry one around. If you get it out of the truck, hang it over on the side fence somewhere. So when this all goes to Hades, you got to walk over there to get it. That release of pressure will normally fix what you went to go get the hot shot to fix. Because what happens if one of them gets down here? We want to fix it. We get in there and we go to whopping one of them on the head trying to make her get up. The best thing to do is to back off. That's not our mentality. We want to fix it. We want to make it get better. Just walk off. Go get a glass of water. Unless she's choking, she'll get up. But anything else on this, we think, well, this is simple. And we make this really hard sometimes. Now, here's something else. We normally have too many people here. When you hire a crew to gather cows, I don't know how many you have to hire to get your pastures together. But when you get there, can you let half of them go? Can you let 2/3 of them go? If you can, do it. Okay? Keep your crew there that's going to do this right. Because if you're paying a man a day's wages, he's going to want to help. He's not going to stand over here out of the way, is he? He's going to be right in the middle of the business because we're paying him, he wants to help. That puts him in the way. So very often get down to about 5 people max processing cows. Now you may rotate people in and out, but have them go off and do something else, come back later and spell somebody. But don't have everybody standing around the processing area because I guarantee you some of them are going to be in the way. All right? The only other thing I really want to talk about today is loading cattle because I see a lot of people get hurt loading cattle. And if we want to run any more through this process than we can, it's getting pretty toasty down here for these heifers, so I don't want to harass them too much, but this is kind of fun. Now, since we've trained them to come out this side, we're going to set this panel over here. This is our slider, Temple. We're going to slide it across the gate. So they can't get out the way they're trained to get out. So we can use a bud box or a sweep or anything else to load trailers with. We can Y off of the sweep. We can go out the other side of a box and make it all work for the same purpose. Now, ideally, I'd probably have 10 or 20 feet of straight alley coming off of there to get the cattle committed to go, and then they can jump on the trailer. But here, I can put enough pressure on them. I think they'll jump out of that. And we'll see. If not, they'll jump on top of me. We'll see how that works. Now, this is another thing. They can load all these heifers on that trailer at one time. My problem is I can't get them all in the box at one time. So this brings up a point. A box is expandable. If you're going to be loading semis, you can make it bigger to where you can get a whole compartment in there. Remember, it's a flow-through part, so you want to get them all in there and get them all to flow out. But you need more capacity for semis. Stock trailers, it might actually work for this one. I may try it. If it don't, I'll split them and go that way. What doesn't hurt to put part of them on, close a cut gate. Some of us are immune to doing that, I think. We don't ever close a cut gate. We just cram them on there and go. And these will fit on there pretty comfortable, so we'll see what happens. But my bud box is my limiting factor on this one. But we'll do the same process we did loading the bud box. You tie that up a little. You're my man. So I can just vision that panel hitting me in the back of the head. All right. I'm going to try something here that I don't have a clue whether this is going to work or not. But a lot of times, if we'll load cattle this way, they will stay on the trailer without us doing anything. So I'm going to bring about half to 2/3 of them. I'll get them all in the alley. I'll jump the first ones on, and then I'll bring the rest of them in and load them on the trailer. I just think that's maybe too many to put in that box. They're all looking at me like, not again, fool. I really appreciate the use of the horse, the cattle, the facilities, the whole 9 yards. This has been a fun group to work with. And it's no small feat to get people to let you bring their stock up for me to play with, and I understand that. Now, I don't know how many people that you couldn't have take half of them and come back and get the other half for any money in the world. But sometimes it's the best thing you can do. They think this is something different now. And they're right. Now I'm going to get my flow started. This heifer will find an opening, hopefully. Now my first job is going to be to turn those on the trailer back around so they don't want to come play with us. And then start this one. There you go. 869, go figure. I don't know if y'all applaud because that went well or because it's over. Could be both. But that way, loading cattle, those that were on the trailer weren't trying to jump off, were they? All I had to do is turn them back around. They sat there and waited. Now listen to the trailer. Pretty quiet, isn't it? So they're comfortable. They got on there on their own accord. They can find a spot and they get quiet. They're going to move a little bit. One, because there's no cut gauge set, so they can move back and forth in the trailer. We'd been better off probably putting in there, and stock density is a big deal in a trailer. You want them tight, but you don't want them so tight they can't move. Then they get stressed. So get them where you do shift in your trip, they're not falling over. You can have one compartment loose, but try to have the rest of them. I see people that just hot shot and stack cattle on top of one another so they won't leave two in another compartment. I don't get that. Loosen them up a little bit. And if you've got to hot shot your cows to get the gate closed so you can get your horse on there, you either need to haul less cows or come back and get your horse. Because I see people going down the highway all the time with cattle down in their trailer and their horse in the back. That's a bad, bad thing to see going down the highway. It's one of those very public things that we don't think about, and we don't even know is happening as we're going down the highway. But if we stacked them in there that close, we've got a good chance it's going to happen. Any questions on this part of it? Like I said, that's jumping them straight into the trailer. That's not even getting them lined out and getting them single file going in there. If you did have it, you might actually need another person at the trailer to make them jump. So I don't mind doing this at all. You just got to be patient, let them figure it out. But I was patient, but how long did it take? Not long at all, right? And if you're loading out an alleyway, which a lot of people do, you're going to wind up behind the cattle a lot, but you lose the ability to make the front jump when you do that. And if you put too much pressure on the back, they want to run over the top of you. And so when you're pressuring from behind in a situation like that, you've got to make sure you don't put too much pressure on these cattle that are trying to do the right thing. So you got to allow them to keep turning and pushing. Just like when I come around the front of that chute the first time, I had to let the cattle push themselves around there. Because if I put too much pressure, they'd have blown back over me into the pen. Same thing in the alleyway. So most people get in there and they're screaming and hollering and whipping on the cattle that cannot go anywhere. Their only option is to come over the top of you to get rid of the pressure. Or that's what they think is their option, okay? So pressure, release, give them a place to go. Something I haven't talked about, and we don't talk about a lot when you're working by yourself, if there's two of you working, unless you're opposite ends of the herd, you can't both be putting pressure at the same time. And that's something cowboys have a hard time with. It's the same thing when you're taking a herd in, everybody's pushing. But if you're doing it right, somebody's pushing more here and somebody's giving them a place to go. And then that one pushes pressure. And it's just give and take until you get everything moved where they need to go. But if everybody's pressuring, that's when the herd goes to spilling. And everybody gets around them. They surround the herd. Boy, and they're pushing them all together and they wonder why this herd spills. They spill because you ask them to spill. So those on the outside of herd, y'all ever heard of the concept of T to a gate? It's hard to even explain, but if you've got a bunch of cowboys here, you need to stay in a straight line. The gates, the bottom of the T is the line going to the gate. And so wherever you're at, that top of that T moves this way. It doesn't go this way, it moves this way. So if this bunch needs to bring cattle in, this bunch takes pressure off. Y'all remember when I first started, I come out to the side to keep the front straight? That's the same concept as that T. Okay? When you're by yourself, you're the top of the T. So you got to be in all those spots at some point in time. You got to release over here or put pressure up here or vice versa. And so if you think of it, that is really, really hard for people to do. If you're wanting to go through a gate up here, make yourself go off over here. Oh, Lordy. That's one of the toughest things a cowboy can make himself do, ride in the wrong direction. But when you do that, you take pressure off that eye. Y'all remember this heifer that I couldn't push her eye into that opening a while ago? So I had to go the other side and draw her eye that way. So if you're pushing on them, they keep looking at you and they don't turn loose to go find where you need them to go. That's something you really have to work on. It's one of the toughest things I see people trying to retrain themselves is to back off when they need to. All right, I'm done all the damage I'm going to do to these, and I've enjoyed it very much. And Vaca Corrales, is that who brought the Peyton Ranches? Thank y'all very much for letting me harass your heifers. I want to thank Andy and the committee for letting me come up here and play. This is always a lot of fun to me to come work cows and get paid for it. It's kind of fun. And so we get to do these all over the country in a lot of different settings. We do feedlot trainings, preconditioning. I like the preconditioning side of it a bunch because we can take a lot of stress off cattle by training them to do what we need them to do like this and really help on the health side of it. We can help reproductive performance. We can help on the health side. And I think for the young people that are still here, this is an area I think, unless something just falls completely apart, this is going to be an area where you can make a name for yourself. We need people that get skilled at this that we can send out in the country.